All right, and we're live. Hey,
Hello,
hello.
hello.
Hey, everyone. All right. So we're taking kind of an impromptu stream just to kind of fill in for ETL, so to speak.
We got
Um,
the large shoes. We're gonna try and just step in briefly, in our tiptoes. You know, when you're a little kid and you're trying on your dad's shoes, and then walk around the house with them flopping around.
yeah. But why are we stepping? Who are we? So we're the Chronowalkers. I'm Eric L.
And I'm Shahanigans.
And we're just going to do kind of a quick little stream today, starting with, and basically just talking about the deck that I brought to the Days of Beckoning Championship that happened last week. So right on screen you can see this is version 2.0 of the Chair of Violence, or as I now like to call it, the Lions, Tigers, and Chairs deck. I think is a little bit of a funnier name.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
I do like Chair of Violence because we've
yeah.
got the best chair in Genesis, Stone Protector of Knee, and
Hmm.
then Cato being a professor, and then
Hmm.
Violent Byman. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff there.
Yeah, that being said,
But yeah,
the reason it was originally called Chair of Violence is so let's kind of look at where this deck came from, and then we can kind of go over how this deck came to be. So,
yeah, and I'll also mention Eric took this list to a very strong third place finish. Like, there's only two places which are stronger than that particular finish. So like,
see.
pretty good piloting and a pretty strong deck. I think we can safely say.
Yeah, so up on screen now we have this is my original version of the deck, right? So
Yeah.
as you can see, we have a lot of H's.
Yes, I was gonna
Yeah,
mention we already got what is that 9? So we got 72 chi of our
yeah,
of our deck already tied up in just the top slot.
yep. But it was we had more Bymans, a couple more Bymans, and then Epiphanies, which means that you even see more Bymans as well because of the Epiphanies. Get an Epiphany, get a Byman. And so this really relied on kind of the Byman chair or Stone Protector of Knee combo, so to speak. Well,
Yes.
just and then having Earthfang Line as kind of a low chi summon to help get some repeatable sources of damage, but really just going all in on this combo.
Yeah, I
Which,
think we're kind of seeing that with the use of Epiphany these days. Like, if you're not Nubia, of course, because Nubia is kind of its own category when not analyzing whether you want to put Epiphany in your deck. But yeah, Epiphany seems to show up more when like you just want to like a critical mass of something or to pull off a specific card interaction is where Epiphany start popping into decks that don't have natural card draw.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, the fact that we got 5 Bymans and I think 6 Stone Protectors, which I believe is also higher
mhm,
than what you ended up on with, yeah, is just kind of declaring, yeah, we're deeper into this plan of trying
yep,
to get at this haymaker.
yeah. And when this deck popped off, it was pretty disgusting. But
I can imagine.
it had with Epiphany, you can have some issues where you don't draw your Epiphanies, or you draw too many of them because you only really want to play one or two, or else you just run out of resources, run out of cards, stuff like that. Um, and then we saw, Ray do really well with his Kato deck with Tigers. Um, and so, I thought maybe we should kind of condense the chi values a little bit, have it a better curve instead of having it weighted too heavy towards the top.
Yeah, a comparison I always love to make is to look at your what I call positive chi cards. So that is your threes and your fours, which we in the original build we've got 22 of, and then compare that to your negative chi, so to speak, because like it's a chi drain on the deck. So you've got 9 plus 4, or sorry, 9 plus 5 the main deck, so it's 14. So we've got like this is kind of like the cost of HEs, right? It's like
Hmm.
theoretically, obviously, it's more nuanced than this, but 22 cards, bad cards, so to speak, using quotes, are needed to balance the 14 good cards. And then, like, so you need the epiphany there almost to just make sure you hit at least one of them per game.
Yep.
Never mind two.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And so yeah, we wanted to make, or I wanted to a not play Epiphany and b make a more consistent deck, which I think I did. The newer
yeah,
version
absolutely.
felt pretty consistent. I just also want to point out one thing before we switch back is that if you notice There's a careful consideration in the sideboard.
Yes,
And the
I was
idea
really interested in that.
against Aura Purge was to basically swap Epiphanies and Dedicated Studies for Olims and careful considerations, since those do not get hit by Aura Purge, and just kind of like swap away from that. But not as many people played Aura Purge as I was expecting, and I figured it was just better not to go all in on the Epiphanies. So we go from our Chair of Violence to our Lions, Tigers, and Chairs deck. All right.
Actually, just to hit on what you said there, it's kind of interesting because like the amount of Nubia decks we saw is like maybe people did have Aura Purge in mind and they just brought in decks that didn't care about it because of course Nubia's Vision's passive doesn't, it's just like points and laughs at Aura Purge.
True.
But anyway, back to you.
But there were a lot of Nubia players running Dedicated Studies. But anyway, up on screen right now we have Chair of Violence 2.0 or Lions, Tigers, and Chairs, whichever one you prefer. And as you can see, up to 7 Ajna Tigers, and we got it down from 9 8-cheese to 3. So that really opens up the deck, allowing more Chronowalkers. We got more Tsunamis. We got our Ajna Tigers. So it really just kind of makes the deck so much more consistent because our power is now not all at the top end, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we can do my little comparison from before, right? Now we've got 21 instead of 22, so not a big cut in the bottom in terms of like the number of positive cheat cards we're using, but our negative cheat cards we're all the way up to 16, which is sweet in terms of like the number of like and like they're generally threats, right? I mean, we've kind of seen Chronowalker is. I mean, it's the Swiss Army knife of being a threat just because of its toughness, plus like everything else it does. And then it's like 10 between the Bimans and Ajna Tigers. So like, really sweet stuff.
Yeah, and if you want, we only went up 2 negative chi cards and down 1 positive chi, as you mentioned. However, if you want to do the ratios on that, right? 14 to 22, that's an over 50% increase in cards, while 16 to 21 is about a 33%. So we dropped from a little bit over 50 to around 30, like low 30s. So that's like a pretty large decrease in the difference in cards. So it allowed us to have a much higher chance of drawing those powerful cards that we want to hit.
Yeah.
I will say you are obviously less have a lower chance of getting your Bimans, and maybe having more Bimans would have been good against the Angel decks, but even I think it made it better against the rest of the field.
Yeah.
So
I guess where I would come in here is I always like to start with the 3 cheese. So I see like if we're comparing the two, before you had like 4 Aquatic Lutra and 4 Cobus, as well as I guess the mind reading package, and now we've gone I guess into a little bit more of the standard like control-y methodology for Cato. So that's like the pressure points and the shutdowns and the hardy soups. So like how did that come about, I guess?
Yeah, I mean if you look at our aura turns, we have an aura turns of 8. So literally the hardy soups are there because the Aquatic Lutras cost aura, and I didn't want to have more aura cards in my deck. However, the one thing that was pointed out, well, having more cast summons that can help deal with the Angels would have been nice, so maybe Aquatic Luchas would have been good. B is that something that Ollie said, the winner of the championship, was why does Cato even need shutdowns and pressure points? He already has Force Warp. And I think that's actually a really good point. Something I didn't really think about. Shutdown I could kind of see to deal with like meteorites and rope tornadoes. Because those are things you can't just force rip away.
Absolutely, or the tsunami, of course.
Or tsunami, yeah. Well, tsunami you can kind of just force rip away, right?
Oh, right, yes, force warp the player. Absolutely.
Yeah. But so I think like shutdown and pressure pointer cards I could have just not run at all. And the Hardy Soup I think wasn't really necessary. So I think I could have gotten rid of those 6 cards and added the Aquatic Luchos to deal with the Angels if I had expected Angels to have at least some way of dealing with them. I probably would have gone down maybe like 1 Tsunami or something like that to just kind of offset the aura increase in the deck, but that would have been a good thing to have, I think. The Hardy Soups, I do think... I'm trying to remember if they helped out against Adiras, but I think the just like hindsight is 2020, so maybe some aquatic
Yeah.
leeches would have been nice.
Cool.
Mind reading, I'm actually we kind of joked about this last deck tech I did with Dazin, but I'm kind of
Yeah.
thinking mind reading might be bad just because it's too much information overload. I had one game where I lost it because I had perfect knowledge of his hand and still made a bad play because I was just like thinking too much about different things, and then overthought something and then forgot something else and then just made a really bad play and ended up losing that game. So mind reading, it's like a powerful effect, but like the wear it has on your brain is actually not
Yeah.
something to ignore.
Especially a deck like this, which dances around so much, like between Chronowalkers, Warp Spikes, and snares on your own Chronowalkers to manipulate positioning, and then the force swapping of your own Chronowalkers.
Mm-hmm.
Like the good old summon a Chronowalker behind you, and then let the decoy go off, and then yeet the Chronowalker away so that no one takes any damage.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so much just like reactivity and interaction with the board. I mean, Aja Tiger too. Yeah, I can totally see like the it's a little mentally taxing to go through. I mean, maybe with more reps, who knows? Like if you had a long time to kind of test it, but
Yeah, yeah. As I guess as you know, we tested it like 2 days before.
yeah. I mean, we tried to focus on what we thought was like the most significant things that could disrupt the deck. But yeah, I mean, there's always a argument for like just it's like how in like modern you'll see that like people putting up good results for like the meta decks, and then you'll always have like someone who's like brought the same deck every month, and it's like it's not technically supposed to be a good deck, but because they've played it so much, like they can still put up. It's just you have one person taking a deck that's gone off meta to a really good finish, even if it's not first place, but it's just like they just know the deck so well that they can outperform.
Yeah.
But anyway,
and if you know that deck so well, and it's not an off meta deck, you can take people by surprise, which is a pretty big factor as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Also note that the energy turns looks high at 16 here for a Cato on the final version, but keep in mind that we want to be using that force warp, and that does cost energy and aura. So
yeah, aggressively use your force warp. It's very strong. Don't be afraid. Don't worry too much about it. Just use it if it gets you a tempo advantage.
Yeah. Actually, maybe there's a quick question to ask actually before we go a bit further, which is like, with us seeing like such strong results from more just like Cato decks that are all in on the Ajna Tiger and Chronowalker plan, what made you want to shift to this Violent Bimant and Stone Protector interaction and like kind of bring it into this deck? Just with like 8 cards, it's not going to be super consistent, but like it's always going to be something that you can pull off. But what made you want that spice?
So I was actually just noticed that we have comments. So I was looking at the comments. Sorry, but let's go back to. I'll try to answer your question then. See read some comments.
Yeah, and then we
see
can
if
pop
we
to
can
the comments.
Yeah, so I mean, you're asking like why only 3 Bimants and 5 need Stone Protectors if it's like not a big part of the deck. I mean, so the Stone Protector. I mean the Violent Bimants. That's something we like hit upon actually at the start of Origins, like our very first video. We talked about this literally was it 4 months ago now, more than 4 months ago. We talked about this. Having Stone Protector plus Bimant is kind of a combo, and this might be stronger than the Angel Stone Protector deck, especially since the Bimant has that range and can be played in any blue deck. We also talked about how Cato is really good with having like a very strong summon, which Bimant is, very strong. And Bimant proved amazing when I got it, and it was integral in a couple matchups, which I'll go over soon. So I think it's just like having some of top end was good because, I wasn't expecting necessarily the same Angel deck that was brought. It was always something in the back of your mind you had to play around, right? And having Tigers and Lions isn't the best. So having something that can deal with those, and of course the Iblis deck, that was also huge. Having some big hitter against the Iblis deck was necessary. I wouldn't have been able to win without the Bimants because they can heal so much. It's crazy. And then I guess on one last point is that the Stone Protector is just really good with Cato because you can warp things onto the Stone Protector. Like I warped someone's
Yeah.
angel onto my Stone Protector, then flew it away. Right? You can kind of like get the Stone Protector on yourself, surround your opponent with summons, and then fly Cato away to kind of like save yourself. So they don't really have a chance to burn you down at the end. Even just a tiger or a lion on Stone Protector is great, right? So there's a lot of like cool, nifty things you can do with Stone Protector with Cato that's just kind of fun.
Yeah, and it's the whole threat of activation, right? Because it doesn't even really cost you that much in terms of a turn, but buys you a lot of time where they're
Exactly.
like, well, actually, I just need something to be able to assail this. I'll also mention that, I guess, in our testing, I guess, we also looked at a couple of other cards that could have fit in the slot. Because we were thinking about, like, angels and, I guess, like, 6 health is also a thing. Because, like, we were considering, like, firing Krogs, which had, even though we're not dealing water damage, just that amazing awareness. For the HE, like Bimon slot. Also, Rabbit, Gargantuan Rabbit, purely because it had that 7th pip of health, which like put it to a point where, you know, like, oh, a double end of turn Asha Tiger into a beginning of turn Tiger activation, like that 6 damage, double, like 1-2 punch isn't enough to kill a Gargantuan Rabbit. Is that something to look at? Also, it's got the, what's it called? The, Fatigue, which would have been critical against like Nubia decks, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Nubia Bolt Walker deck specifically. But I guess the issue is it didn't kill Chronowalkers in one hit. It doesn't hit Angels. And despite its 6 health, Cato makes it so that you're not as susceptible to that, because that was a big issue. I know Will removed all Inferno Crawlers from his Satyr deck because the threat of end of turn Tiger attack, then attack again against a Inferno Crawler or any 6 health HE was so brutally backbreaking that you just can't do that. But Cato plus Vivant, I think, was worth it. But again, you also don't want to go too heavy on those HEs that can just get wiped out by a single Tiger. So and that's why I think Angels were so good, because it didn't get killed by a single Tiger.
Another reason we settled on Biment was just like being able to attack from one space away. With, I mean, the number of warp strikes that people like. I mean, warp strike, I think, kind of like seeing copies in everyone's deck, even if it's not a huge amount. But like, it's just like interaction with like adjacent spaces, right? Like everyone's really good at that, but just being one space away while you're hitting someone down with a Biment, it's really, really sweet.
Yeah, there are times when warp strike is better than Chronowalker. But yeah, so let's go to the 4-Cheese. 13 4-Cheese Dedicated Studies has obviously been a very good card. Usually we see it paired with Epiphany, but I didn't want to go with Epiphany. And without Epiphany, Dedicated Studies isn't all that great too, especially since we only have 8 3-Cheese, right? So having a couple is fine, but I took them out a lot. It was very common for me to go take out 3 Dedicated Studies, put in 3 snares. That was a common line. There was a time in which I had no cards above 5 chi, put a Dedicated Studies, drew 2 Bimans, and that was nice. But for the most part, it wasn't the best card. So, but it was nice to have those 3 just on the off chance that they were good. The Earthbane Lions, though, are so good.
Yeah, people are really sleeping on this card. The Exert really scares people. But I mean, when you're a character like Cato, who, like, I mean, just look at all the quick beckons and stuff, and like, you know, swift speed stuff for playing, like, we're happy to double move and just hang out with Argent Tigers and Chronowalkers in hand. And yeah, having also single move turns where you can just deploy an extremely relevant threat. Like, look at this, guys.
Yeah.
It's
3 damage. It's a lot.
3 damage at 4G. Like, come on. And it costs 5 aura.
Yeah.
Like, it is very, very efficient at what it does. And all you need to do is make sure that you never have more than 2 in hand. Because honestly, 2 in hand is not a big deal. Because it just means you get to deploy 2-3 damage attackers over 2 turns. Like, are we complaining about that?
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind is because of the Exert, it is low on the aura cost, which is great. It allowed me to play a little bit longer games and deploy threats even when I'm low on aura. But there was a time, I was thinking, like, I didn't play this card in the first turn of the game because I'm like, oh, it's got Blitz, I don't need to play it on the first turn. But then I drew another one, and I'm like, oh, oops. So it's sometimes, because of the Exert cost, it is nice just to get out early. because there are times later in the game when you don't want to pay that exert cost. It is definitely a cost, and there are times where man, I want to get down my line and I want to double move and attack, and you can't do both. So, which is fine at a 4 chi. There's got to be trade-offs, but overall, amazing card.
Yeah.
My only complaint is that it can't kill angels.
I think if you take a build of Cato that is obviously not trying the Stone Protector interaction and just going more all in on Chronowalkers and Tigers, I could definitely see a couple more copies of Earthmane. Just because Chronowalker, like we see with Boltwalker, just becomes your movement technique. Mm-hmm. So then it's kind of you get more of these free, early turns. And they're combine that, of course, with we've mentioned it before, but Cato's ability to put something in front of you and it's fine, it's protected. So Earthfate line is just in front of you. Mm-hmm. It's ready to go, and if they attack it, all you do is force warp and it's safe again. Yep. And then it's in perfect position probably to just attack back whatever came to hit it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Cato, I think, just kind of go a little bit more into the line. The exert cost is a definite cost, and it hurts it to be played with a lot of other champions, which I think is why it's not played that often, right? How many Thymos champions are there that want to pay the exert cost? Tashir wants to attack every turn. Idris wants to fireball every turn. The fighters Shun, Essa, they want to attack every turn. They don't want to waste their exert on a summon that could, maybe do damage, maybe not do damage, right?
Absolutely.
So Cato's ability to force warp even when he's exerted means that he does get extra advantage out of the lion, which is why I don't think it's played in that other champions as often, but maybe it should. I don't know what we'd have to see, but in Cato it's amazing. All right, let's go to Snare, right? Snare. Snare's another card that I knew it was good, but then we talked to Ray about it. So I've a lot of this deck is influenced by Ray. So thanks, Ray, and congrats on second place. There's a reason why you got second place. He went into how good Snare was, and it's not just using it offensively. You can use it on your own Chronowalkers, yourself, other things. It just got so much utility, and it's amazing. I will say the deck wasn't built to necessarily have 5 in the forethoughts, because I was constantly putting in 3 for my 3 dedicated studies and then leaving 2, and so it wasn't really built fully optimally. But even so, the snares were very strong, obviously. I'm trying to remember if I ever drew too many. It was definitely.
It's hard to imagine, right? Because it's almost it buys you most of the time in these big haymaker decks. Mm-hmm. It's buying you a turn, right? Even when it's not, even when it's not letting you do more than that. So it's can you draw too many? Maybe based on the energy cost. But aside from that,
I will say I was a little unused to Snare a little bit. There are definitely times I played it, and then they're all right, attack with my Nubia, and I'm oops. So that's something you got to keep in mind. So one thing that was interesting was one time there was an angel in front of me and Nubia behind it, so I couldn't snare the angel. So I snared myself, and the angel couldn't fly over me to kill my byman. So that was something you can think about.
That is awesome. Mm-hmm. I love those kind of edge plays. And I guess to just mention the previous version deck, Snare went from being 3 in the forethoughts to 3 in the main.
Mm-hmm. And 5 in the
forethoughts. Absolutely a great card. I actually wonder if Snare and people becoming more and more familiar with its strength is part of why Will K shifted off the dash version of Satyr for the range version.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to pick his brain about that change, if Snare was part of it or is just kind of
I think it's a combination of Snare and Tigers, right?
Yes,
both of those really shut down dash, and that dash trigger can be brutal at times.
Because a trigger on summons, not an immediate with. So, cool. Yeah. All right, 5 cheese.
5 cheese. All right, so we have Tsunami. Obviously, great card. No need to sell Tsunami. And once you got 4 in the main deck, 4 in the sideboard. Really good card. It is expensive.
Not
not much to say about it. Expensive on Aura, so that's why there's only 4. and then I brought in 4 against angels or other, swarm decks. Or sometimes I wouldn't even go up 4. I'd only go up like 1 or 2, something like that. But good card, and when you want it, you want it. But yeah, all right. Let's move on. Move on to Chair. So this is our Stone Protector of Knee. Chair. This
So
is
we
the
shaved one copy versus the original build. So it's not a big change.
Yep. And I would occasionally take out like 1 Stone Protector for like 1 Tsunami or something like that. Just do like slight adjusting. Especially if I would go down by Mance, I would then also shave some chairs. But
Makes sense.
but the things you can do with Stone Protectors is it's really fun, right? That's like I kind of touched on it before, but the ability to warp something onto a chair, either your own summons or opponent summons or whatever, you can do a lot of like fun stuff. So even if you're not carrying around a Violent Byman, it can still do some powerful things.
Yes. Chair remaining. I mean, like teleportation. To quote like the original spell version, right? Whereas this is like a summon version of it. Yeah, teleportation always a powerful effect. Especially, and yeah, if you can apply it to someone else who doesn't want you to do it, it's always going to be pretty reasonable.
Yep.
Cool. And then Warp Strike.
Well, all right. We'll have Aura Purge, I guess, of just going by the.
Well, I guess I was going with mainboard cards.
Yeah, I know. It's just right there,
Yeah.
I guess. But yeah, three Aura Purges in the sideboard. I don't think I played a single copy. I brought it in a couple times and I never played it, and I stopped bringing it in. I mean, we talked about this. It's a powerful card, but like, there wasn't enough card draw, I guess. Not enough epiphanies and stuff like that to justify bringing it in.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's like to quote a little history, it's like the gas masks that were distributed to every like soldier, for World War II after how much mustard gas and all those horrible things were used in World War I, and then they just weren't used that much because, like everyone, intel. Oh wait, all the opposing soldiers are coming with gas masks. I guess we shouldn't using gas. This is kind of pointless then. So it's like kind of the same thing. It's like everyone's kind of aware of it. Maybe they're shifting to decks that don't play it as much. So it's kind of done its job without even needing to be played. But I guess we didn't get the memo, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder. I mean, it was just like a lot of Nubias, right? So I don't know how much. But either way, it's whatever. I guess this was like a last minute inclusion. I never even tested it with it in my deck at all. I just after some testing, I was like, oh, you know what? I should probably have some Aura Purges. So I kind of adjusted it slightly, put in some Aura Purges, and it is what it is.
Yeah, it's not a big ask for as a 5-chi, right? So
all right, so now we got Warp Strike, right? So
yes.
Warp Strike, incredibly powerful card, kind of the mainstay of the last deck I brought with the Bazin Warp Strike deck. Obviously this is a little bit less because you don't need as many. Because you have a little bit more health, but you also have your Force Warp and more Chronowalkers. So the Stone Protectors. So you're like a little bit more defensive than Bazin, so you don't need that extra Warp Strikes. But yeah, I mean, it's just a generally good card.
Yeah, and synergizes incredibly well with Quick Beckons, right? Because it's like similar stuff that we saw with Boston, honestly, with the Emergent Worms, where it's like you're constantly in a spot where you feel comfortable that you have that get out of jail ready to go.
Yep, that's true. Yeah,
if they ever wipe your board, well, I mean, I've got the 2 cards ready to just get out of whatever is coming at me. So
yeah, that's right. Like with a Quick Beckon, like a Tiger, you have like an Tiger plus Warp Strike is almost like a Chronowalker. That being said, I would say it's a lot weaker because of Snare, right? So,
of course.
So Snare hitting Warp Strike is absolutely brutal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think that Bazin deck could even be playable now with how many snares there were.
With people saying, so many snares, yeah.
Which is unfortunate, but that's okay. All right. So now you have Chronowalker. Right, so in 6G, yes. Chronowalker. I mean, man, people like really hate Chronowalker, huh?
Oh, it's like it's Chronowalker's world. We just live in it. So I think
Yeah.
that's unfortunately the
Um,
way it is.
but yeah, I mean, I went up Chronowalkers, right? My first version had 5. Now I've got 6 and then 2 in the board. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it's so good. And Cato makes it better, right? Because you can Chronowalker behind you, swap, and then force over Chronowalker to save it. And
yeah.
so, yeah,
And then
it's
you've dodged everything. And you
dodged
have a three.
everything. And you have a 3. Exactly. Oh, man. Like, it's so good.
So good.
There was even a play where I Chronowalkered, Warp Striked off the Chronowalker, Force Warped a bunch of my things out of bolt shot range, and then and then decoyed back, and then Force Warped my own Chronowalker to dodge even more
I
bolt
was
shot.
I
Yeah.
was actually gonna ask if you'd ever Chrono Walker and like before with the decoy on the sack
Yep.
because like
Mhm.
just imagine and yeah,
Yeah, that was against Connor, and he whiffed on 3 bolt shots, and
yes, I mean that's a big hit to
yeah,
take to someone. Yeah, 3 bolt shots.
yep. But yeah, very good card.
Yeah, and I
Um,
guess last card we haven't talked about is just Cog Restrict since we kind of talked
yeah,
about the game plan when we got hit Stone Protector.
yep. So I mean, Cog Restrict is in the sideboard to kind of counter Chronowalkers,
Mm.
in a sense. It's one of the few cards that can like 1-for-1 a Chronowalker, which is kind of a shame that
Yeah.
it's costs the same aura but costs more chi, and it's like very situational. Um,
Yeah, but the perk is that it's not just hitting like even though you bring in for Chrono Walkers, you've got the versatility to hit like anything else, right? Like
yeah.
oh, it beckons our abilities, right? So it's this is very much a counter spell to use I guess magic terms for our
Mhm.
magic players, right? Like it's hitting everything.
Yeah.
Um
So sometimes I would shave down some tigers for this, especially if they weren't as much on the big summon plan, because tigers are very good at like ward control, and so if they're more of a burn deck, then I would bring in some cog restricts to kind of like stop like some bolt shots or anything like that, as a way to
yeah.
like kind of gain life, so to speak. I will say the fact that you can Chrono Walker out of a cog restrict makes a cog restrict very
Yes.
scary to play against a Chrono Walker deck, which is something I hadn't thought about that much when putting cog restricts in my sideboard.
Yeah, it's very true. So for those who aren't familiar, the reason for that is Cog Restrict has 2 targets on it. Negate target ability played by target champion. So if someone Chrono Walkers, obviously the Chrono Walker can't pull the negate target ability off the ability, but it can pull the target champion onto the Chrono Walker because Chrono Walker is allowed to make illegal targeting assignments as part of its decoy. It just pulls everything. So then, yeah, the ability then on resolution has an illegal targeting restriction, right? It's trying to target a champion, but it's targeting a summon. So
Yep.
then the ability fails.
Yeah, which is a shame. Like cog restrict should not target a champion. I don't know why it should just say target negate target ability played by a
Played by an
champion.
enemy or, yeah, enemy champion. Something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
Yeah, like I think that's just kind of one of those like slightly overlooked small little details that have huge implications that aren't really considered when making the card.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things in our I guess our 3-game set with Will K. We said multiple times
Yeah.
over that 3-game set, Chrono Walker gets better the longer you play it because like we had this interaction, we had what was the other one? Was it something to do with like tsunami?
There was
Or no, it was the snare, I guess.
maybe
Yeah, double
snares or
snare.
multiple other things.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but there was so many
Yeah.
interactions. Go watch it. Go watch it. It was a lot.
Yeah, you should watch our 3-game set from the Gauntlet. So I've actually tagged the best moments, so you don't even have to watch the whole thing. Though we'll appreciate if you do. But you can jump straight to like the like Chrono Walker gets better. Chrono Walker gets better again. Moment in that stream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
So
I guess yeah. So sorry. Go ahead.
oh yeah, well I was gonna say if that's kind of like where we're finishing, I guess the final question is like yeah, like where would you go with this deck? Like, do you still think it's the Stone Protector plus Bioman? I mean, there's a great argument for just Bioman by itself, honestly, as a catch-all with that further awareness and ranged attack. But yeah, like where would you take this deck going forward?
Yeah, so I think this deck is very strong as is right now, right? However, taking into account the Angel deck, I would, as we talked about earlier, have some more Aquatic Luchas in the 3 cheese. Take out the pressure points, take out the shutdowns. Maybe like go
Yeah,
down
just
one hardy soup.
dodge stuff instead
Yeah,
of trying to counter it.
and
Just
and
dodge it
then
all.
and then have like 3 hardy soups, three aquatic luchas. Just like have them there as like slightly more, power. You can just kind of drop down to cheap. Additionally, I would probably not run Cog Restricts in the sideboard, but what I would run is kind of a swap almost. If I can take a look, let's see. It was the Naja Cobras. I would probably
Ooh.
swap in some Naja Cobras for this in the 7-tree slot over the Tigers, and just do like kind of a 1-for-1 to kind of counter that Angel deck. Maybe not all 7.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can fit that many, but like have some number of Cobras to have that more aerial damage that you can have.
Also hedges against the Iblis deck as well, which is trying just because it's another like larger damage amount. It's Naja Cobra 4 or 5. I'm trying to remember.
Naja Cobra has 5 health and deals 4 damage, cast damage.
4 damage, yeah. Cool. 4 cast damage. So yeah, it's just like another higher damage chunk. Because I think that I guess Iblis Tech with all it was like, I don't know, was it 10 or so hallowed grounds? Just trying to like you can't hit me, leave me alone.
Yeah, a lot of hallowed grounds, a lot of beck and breaks, a lot of life
Yes.
gain. Oh man, that gains so much life.
Yeah, so Bindmant, while it was brought in for other reasons, ended up being clutch. We kind of mentioned already, but I remember on the day, like you mentioned, like wow, like so glad you had something that did damage in large chunks. To deal with that Iblis deck.
I actually have I have my player 1, player 2 health and aura totals sheet. I brought them back from that Iblis deck, and I actually ran out of space on the 2 games I won. And the game I lost, it was also pretty close. Just because like I had to like start writing on the top, doing like all sorts of stuff, like writing in double columns. I did double column my opponent's health total because they kept on like gaining life. Let's see, how much life was that? Yeah, so that's 20 something. Yeah, 24. Yeah. 24 and another 6, so 30 life in one game. Like at least 30 life in like basically every game. I need that damage. Anyway,
that is hot.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know what? We'll probably do some deck tech about it at some point because it's a cool deck that we want to.
Like some really great work in that deck.
Yeah. But all right, so I know it's close to 8, and you have your 8 o'clock thing, so we're gonna wrap up. But do you want to talk about what we have in store for future videos and other content?
So future videos, we got a couple we're working on. So I guess the main one is we're doing a expose, so to speak, on we've got a lot of data from the World Champions 2022, and we're very excited to kind of do some number crunching and take a look at how Genesis has developed with the release of the Origin set. Like, what are the colors that are seeing more play? What are seeing less play? What are the most played cards? What numbers of copies? So all this kind of stuff, So if people want to moneyball Genesis, so to speak, provide a little bit of data for that. And then the other one is, for those who weren't aware, some new cards were announced at the championship. No date on Invasion, so I've got to imagine it's at least pushing, second quarter of 2023, if not later, around when basically Origins came out last year. So don't get too excited that there's going to be a new set coming out in February. Super early. Nothing indicating that, but there were 3 new champions that were spoiled. One champion kind of